several times you mentioned that the Lord spoke to you or that he communicated. I can't remember the exact words that you used, but for instance, after you wrote the book the first time, he basically communicated that you were going to go into this time of isolation. I've got a couple of questions on that. One is, like, how have you experienced God? I'm thinking of people who are hearing that and God's never told me something like that, like something so specific and direct. You know, how does God communicate to you? What did that look like?
Okay, sure. Hearing God's voice is not just a benefit of our spirituality, it's an essential ingredient. Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." This is, in fact, I think Paul even distinguishes those who hear God's voice from those who don't as being whether you're actually in his kingdom or not. It's very essential. So you might be hearing God's voice and just be considering it your own common sense or even your own conscience. So that's possible, but the truth is, for me, I'll have a train of thought. I'm going down a certain path in my mind, and when a thought comes that's unexpected, that's not, its source is not my mind, it comes from another direction, and that is always good, always right, always more profound and better, smarter than I am, then I know it's God. I know it's God speaking. And that happens to me quite often in small, mundane ways and also in greater, more significant ways, like that story I told. So I look for those things. If you hear something and you're not sure if it's you or if it's God, it could be just your imagination, you think. A lot of people, their minds are constantly ticking and they can't really discern whether it's them or God. God wants you to hear his voice more than you want to hear it. So if you ask him to show you this is from God, you say, "God, I want to know what's you and what's not. Prove it to me in some way. Give me 2 or 3 witnesses to confirm it." Independent corroboration from other sources. He'll do that because he wants you to hear his voice. He wants you to understand. Now, if you're always at that level, you're not growing and maturing. There's an intimacy we have with God, and over the years, you should get more and more intimate. You should know his voice better and respond quicker. So that's a good place to start, but eventually you need to get to the place where the moment you hear God's voice, you know it's what God wants, and you are willing to obey it. But it doesn't always start there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just think of how some people listen to that, and you're right. I think we often doubt, like, is that God guiding me? Is that just my own thinking? So the idea that God wants to guide us and that we can ask him to give us confirmation when we're not 100% sure where that voice is coming from is definitely encouraging.
Right. Well, a large part of Christianity needs God to perform some miracle to verify that God is speaking. And I think he does that in less mature stages of our lives. But the further we get in intimacy with God, I think if your relationship, your intimate relationship with someone important requires that they shout and yell every time you want to hear them, then there's something wrong with the relationship. There needs to grow into an intimacy where you don't even have to exchange words. You just exchange glances and you know you're saying something important to each other. That kind of intimacy is possible, and it doesn't require that God shout with a miracle every time he wants to speak.
I think that's a great it's almost as if God is always going to communicate with us regardless of where we're at in our spiritual journey, our spiritual maturity. But hopefully, as we progress and as we grow in our faith, we're able to discern that voice more clearly and without him having to shout or work miracles.